I need you to listen to something carefully because this might save you years of quiet suffering. Most people think conflict is dangerous. They think peace means avoiding arguments, staying polite, keeping everyone comfortable. That's exactly what I believed. For 50 years of my life, I avoided conflict like it was poison. I stayed quiet when people crossed my boundaries. I smiled when I should have spoken. I agreed when I knew something was wrong. And from the outside, my life looked peaceful. No big fights, no dramatic arguments, no broken relationships. People even called me easy to be around. But what they didn't see was the war happening inside me. Because every time I swallowed my truth, a small piece of me disappeared. And it took me half a century to realize something that nobody tells you. Avoiding conflict doesn't create peace. It creates a slow, silent kind of misery. Let me tell you how this begins, because it usually starts when you're very young. You learn very early that conflict makes people uncomfortable. Maybe your parents fought a lot, and you promised yourself you would never be that kind of person. Or maybe you learned that when you disagree, people get angry, disappointed, or distant. So you start doing something that feels smart at the time. You start becoming agreeable. You become the person who says, "It's fine," even when it's not fine. You say whatever you think is best, even when you know it isn't. At first, people love this about you. They say you're calm, easygoing, mature. But here's the quiet truth nobody warns you about. When you avoid conflict long enough, people slowly stop respecting your voice. Because if you never defend your boundaries, the world quietly learns that you don't have any. And once people get used to walking past your limits, they rarely stop. By the time I was in my 30s, avoiding conflict had become my identity. I was the reasonable one, the calm one, the man who never caused problems. At work, this made me look professional. If my boss asked me to stay late, I said yes. If a coworker pushed their responsibilities onto me, I handled it. People trusted me because I never pushed back. But something strange started happening. The more agreeable I became, the more people expected from me. Not because they were evil, but because humans naturally test the space you give them. If you move your boundary once, they assume it will move again and again, until one day you look around and realize something uncomfortable. You are carrying everyone else's expectations, while nobody is carrying yours. And the strange thing is, this pattern didn't stop at work. It slowly followed me into my personal life. In my marriage, I rarely argued. At least that's what I used to tell people. Friends would say, "You two must have a perfect relationship. You never fight." But the truth is, we didn't fight because I never said what I truly felt. If something bothered me, I would let it go. If I felt hurt, I told myself it wasn't important. If I disagreed about something, I stayed quiet just to keep the peace. And for a while, it looked like harmony. No loud arguments, no slammed doors, just silence. But silence can be dangerous in a relationship, because when you stop expressing what you feel, the other person slowly stops seeing who you really are. And after years of staying quiet, something frightening happens. You wake up one day and realize the life you're living doesn't actually feel like yours. The moment I finally understood the cost of this habit came from something very small. Not a huge argument, not some dramatic life event, just a quiet sentence my wife said one evening. We were sitting in the kitchen after dinner. Nothing special about that night. She looked at me for a moment, and then she said something that stayed with me for the next 30 years. She said, "William, sometimes I feel like I don't actually know what you think." At first, I laughed it off. I told her, "What do you mean? We talk all the time." But she shook her head. And then she said something that hit me harder than any argument ever could. "No, we don't talk. You just agree." And in that moment, I realized something painful. Avoiding conflict hadn't protected my relationships. It had made me invisible inside them. That sentence stayed with me for weeks. You just agree. At first, I wanted to defend myself. I told myself I was being kind, patient, understanding. But the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable the truth became. I wasn't avoiding conflict because I was wise. I was avoiding conflict because I was afraid. Afraid people would be disappointed in me. Afraid they would think I was difficult. Afraid they might even leave. So I did what many people quietly do. I traded honesty for approval. I traded my voice for temporary peace. And the strange thing about that trade is this: the peace you get from silence is never real. It's just tension waiting for a place to hide. You see, most people misunderstand conflict. They think conflict destroys relationships. But the truth is, silence destroys them much faster. When you never express what bothers you, resentment doesn't disappear. It grows quietly. At first, it's small. A comment that annoyed you. A decision you didn't agree with. A moment where you felt ignored. You tell yourself, it's not worth arguing about, so you push it down. But those small moments start stacking up, one on top of another. Days turn into months, months turn into years, and eventually something strange happens. You're no longer upset about one small thing. You're carrying 10 years of unspoken frustration. And by then, even a tiny disagreement feels like an explosion waiting to happen. My turning point came when I was 56. By then, I had spent more than 3 decades being the peaceful man. No arguments, no confrontations, no difficult conversations. And one evening, something very ordinary happened. A colleague at work blamed me for a mistake that wasn't mine. It happened during a meeting. Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to respond. And for a few seconds, the old habit took over. I almost said the words I had said my whole life. It's fine. But something inside me finally refused. 30 years of swallowed words suddenly felt too heavy. So for the first time in my adult life, I calmly said something I had never said before. That's not correct. And the strange thing was, the world didn't collapse. Something strange began happening once I started speaking honestly. At first, people were surprised. Some were even uncomfortable. Because when you've spent decades being the easy person, the moment you start setting boundaries, people notice. I remember the first time I calmly told someone at work, "No, I can't do that." It was a simple sentence, but for me, it felt like lifting 1,000 pounds. And you know what happened? The world didn't end. Nobody exploded. Nobody threw me out of the building. In fact, something interesting happened. Some people actually respected me more. Because when you speak clearly about what you will and will not accept, people finally understand where you stand. And strangely enough, real peace began to appear in my life for the first time. Not the fake peace that comes from silence, but the kind that comes from finally being honest. Here is something I wish someone had told me when I was young. Conflict is not the enemy. Dishonesty is. When you avoid conflict your whole life, you think you're protecting peace. But what you're actually protecting is everyone else's comfort, not your truth. And over time, that creates something very dangerous: resentment. You smile on the outside, but inside the frustration slowly grows. Little moments you ignored, little boundaries people crossed, they start stacking up quietly in your heart. And one day you realize something painful. The anger you feel is not really toward other people, it's toward yourself. Because deep down you know you allowed it. The hardest lesson I learned is this: Avoiding conflict does not make life easier. It only delays the inevitable moment when truth catches up with you. For decades, I thought silence was safety. I thought keeping peace meant being a good person, but I was wrong. The real freedom comes when you face your discomfort, when you say what needs to be said, even if it shakes the room. Because every time you avoid your voice, a part of yourself shrinks. And when you finally speak your truth, you feel alive for the first time in years. Not everyone will like it, not everyone will approve, but the right people, the people who matter, will respect you. And for the first time, you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. Here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Life isn't about avoiding conflict. Life isn't about making everyone happy. Life isn't about swallowing your truth to keep the peace. Life is about showing up fully as yourself. Speak your mind, defend your boundaries, say no when it matters, and do it with calm, with respect, but with honesty. Because the moments you avoid telling the truth are the moments you give away your life. For 50 years, I gave mine away to comfort, to silence, to avoidance. Don't make my mistake. Stand up for yourself, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it shakes the room. Because at the end of the day, the only thing you truly own is your voice and the courage to use it.